What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you've had a wonderful week. Hope you're ready to have a wonderful weekend. And for now, thank you for joining us for Paizo Friday. I am joined today by Logan Bonner. He'll be here all hour. This is the first time we've had one guest for the whole hour. We'll be talking a little bit about the Cleric blog that you did. We'll be talking a little bit about gear that went up today, just a little bit ago. So along the way, feel free. We're going to be also doing a lot of Q&A and all of that. Literally, we've got them for an hour. If it's a little bit longer, we can do that. If it's a little under, we can do that too. And if everything else falls apart, we'll just babble on about whatever we've got.
Right, yeah.
Okay, good.
Have you been watching Ash vs. Evil Dead? Because I'm
you know what?
far into it.
I was ready to talk about this.
Yeah. We'll come back to that later.
We'll come back to it. All right. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Really quick, just to answer a few of the comments that I've been seeing on YouTube, which these videos are going up on YouTube now every Wednesday. One of the comments was, is he not wearing pants? I'm wearing shorts, so I don't know if that counts, but I think when the name tag goes in the way, it looks like I'm not wearing pants, and I promise I am. Otherwise, Logan would look a little bit more uncomfortable right now, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's fine. Picture your audience naked, picture your co-streamer naked, same difference, right?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So anyway, again, thank you for joining us. So right off the bat, Logan, let's talk about what you are doing for Pathfinder Playtest, being on the team and all of that sort of thing. Let's talk about that first.
All right. So I am one of 4 members of the design team with Jason in charge, and Stephen Radney McFarland and Mark Seifter is the other 2 designer and senior designer. Stephen's the senior designer, Mark's the other designer like I am. And so I've written like 20% maybe of the main book itself. I contributed one of the adventures to the Doomsday Dawn playtest adventure, one of the chapters to that adventure, chapter 2. And working on monsters, doing a little bit of everything, which I think at this point in the process, all of us are doing a little bit of everything.
Right.
But some of the main parts I worked on were equipment, magic items. The Cleric is one of the classes I did a draft on. We all kind of switched off on the classes and did various passes on them, but that's one of the ones I did an early pass on, among several others.
Right.
So
I think it's fair to say a lot of the company right now is ditching all of their priority engagements and working on the play test right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm hoping we might have a fun streaming surprise on Tuesday. If it doesn't happen, I'll tell you what it is. But if it does happen, I want to keep it a surprise because I think it's going to be really cool. So going from that, you mentioned that you were working on the Cleric. Last week before last, you did a blog about the Cleric. Last week,
Monday. We did a Monday blog on the Cleric, and then Mark wrote a blog for Friday on the domains and deities specifically and how those work.
Okay. All right. We can get into those things too a little bit, I'm sure. Okay, good. So first of all, and really we're going to talk for a little bit, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So if you're putting questions in there now, make sure you put them back in later afterwards so we can get to it. We don't want to miss those, so might have to repeat them for once, and then we'll get into it. So tell us about the Cleric for Pathfinder Playtest.
So the Cleric is actually the first spellcaster that we are previewing. So we had a blog about spells and kind of said how they worked. And then the Cleric kind of gives a little more information about, how many spells you get and how your suite of abilities, which are kind of, a lot of them are similar to Pathfinder 1. We think kind of streamlined versions of those. But the Cleric is going to feel a little familiar, but with more options. In Pathfinder 1, one of the things we heard a lot was kind of like, the Cleric, you pick a bunch of stuff at first level, and then you just kind of coast. You increase your some of your abilities, but you don't really get new stuff. And with the way classes are structured now, they all have class feats, and there are a whole ton of feats that are specifically made for the Cleric. And so that, I think, is going to give people a lot more ways to kind of take their Cleric and expand on some of the main concepts of the Cleric and bring them closer to their deities focus and that kind of stuff. But you will still see domains, and you will still see channel energy, and a lot of the kind of core stuff you're used to with the Cleric. And they prepare spells in the same way. They're going to have divine spells, just like they did before, and they're going to get to choose from everything on the divine spell list. And you get you start out with 2 first level spells, and each time you level up, you're either going to get 1 new spell of your highest level, or you're going to get a new level of spells and get 2 of those spells. So the cleric starts out with 2 first level spells. At second level, they'll have 3 first level spells. At third level, they're going to get 2 second level spells, and they're going to hold on to their 3 first level spells. And it kind of just keeps going up like that. So you kind of always know at whatever level you're at, you're going to have either 2 or 3 of your top level spell and 3 of all your other levels. You also get cantrips. And one of the big things we've talked about quite a bit before, but heightening spells. Preparing spells in a higher slot to make them more powerful, have them have a stronger effect. And cantrips are a type of spell that is weaker than other spells, but automatically heightens to the highest level you can cast. So all your cantrips are going to keep getting stronger if there's some way that they can scale up. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that those spells you get at each level aren't the full picture of your spells, because we've taken channel energy, and instead of saying, here's this class feature, learn how it works, and it does this thing, it uses the heal spell. And the heal spell is structured so that you can do 1 action and touch someone to heal them. You can pick someone ways away, spend 2 actions to heal them, or you can spend 3 actions to heal everybody around you in a burst of positive energy.
Interesting.
And it also automatically both heals the living and hurts undead. So if you do that burst, mm-hmm. you're going to heal your allies and hurt any undead that are in that aura. So we think that's really kind of an exciting, kind of juicy use for that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a lot more you can build on that with your feats. You can get them so, like, if I heal you, I give you a buff for a while. You can get good old turn undead. So if you hurt them, they might have to run away. And so, yeah, there's a lot of kind of ways we expand on those core class features as you go up in level.
Oh, that's great. That's really cool. What else do we think people are going to be surprised to know about the cleric?
So one of the things we've kind of worked with a little bit, and this applies to a lot of classes, but we kind of started talking about it with the cleric, which is anathema, which is kind of any of the classes that have kind of a stricture on their behavior are going to have anathema. And the cleric's one of those because their deity is going to impose some type of restrictions on their behavior, because that's what the deity wants to see them do. And so each deity lists a few kind of short examples of their anathema, mm-hmm. so that you kind of know if you're getting outside your deity's good graces, it's because you're doing these sorts of things. And so we have kind of some examples of those for the different deities.
Okay.
So like Saren Ray, if you're going around lying a bunch, that's anathemic to Saren Ray. Right. So we've kind of codified that a little more and kind of made it so all the classes that work like that, if you've played one of them, you kind of get a rough idea of how that works with any of the other classes, and you just have to learn what the particular behaviors you're not supposed to be doing with that class are.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So is it kind of like a morality meter?
A little bit,
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, some of it's morality, some of it is, based on the quirks of the deity. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily moral or immoral to do some of the stuff that Caden Kalian wants to do, but he wants you to go party and have fun, and depending on how you do that, that might be good or evil. But
right.
That's kind of doing what your God suggests people should do in the world. Keeps you copacetic.
Okay, all right. And at the point that we're at right now in the development of the Pathfinder Playtest, mm-hmm. are we at the point where we could talk about how that actually translates into the game as a cleric? Like if you're losing some of that favor?
Yeah, usually for most of the classes, if they've got magical abilities, they lose some or all of them. We kind of suggest this is what typically happens.
Okay.
But we also know, for the cleric in particular, with the multitude of gods and with the multitude of types of campaigns and the kind of shades of gray that can happen in those, we didn't want to say, you do 5 things and then you can't cast spells anymore. We didn't want to go too exact with it, because you've got your game master there, and you are going to have to deal with things that are not cut and dried situations sometimes. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to give you a really strong framework for how it works, but not make it overly restrictive by kind of saying, here are your deity favor points, and they tick down by 1 each time, because that doesn't necessarily represent what would actually happen in your game. But we do give a pretty clear portrait of, like, typically you're going to lose your spellcasting and your cleric magical abilities when you fall out of favor with your god.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
And alignment affects that too, because each deity allows certain alignments. And so if you keep doing evil stuff, you're going to eventually become evil, or at least cease being good, and some deities just will say, yeah, I don't allow non-good clerics. We did change how the alignment works with the clerics, because we wanted to make it more evocative of the particular gods. So in first edition, it's based on the alignment of the god strictly, and you have to be within the 1 step and everything like that. But instead we said, all right, we know who our deities are, so we're just going to say these are the clerics' deities that are options for this god.
Okay.
So some of them, because we had weird issues like being able to worship Asmodeus, but be neutral, which is kind of weird. So there was some of that stuff that we wanted to kind of nip in the bud. And so the deities list says what alignments they allow their clerics to have.
Okay. All right. And it's funny. I don't know if some people might already know this. All of my Pathfinder playing going back years and years has always just happened to be rogues. I've always played rogues, just because started off that's what the party needed, and then it turned into I like playing rogues. Yeah. But when we were doing the playtest in the office, way back when I first started at Paizo, you were running, there were multiple people from the playtest team running in-house playtests with different employees. And Logan just happened to be the one that had room at your table. And so I started playing the Pathfinder playtest in the office at your table with you running the game. And I had to learn how to be a wizard and learn the playtest at the same time. And
I think when you were playing, there were probably 10 levels of the game.
Yes.
I think it was past the 5-level version, but I think it was like 10 levels.
Yeah. And I just remember I happened to start right at the time where you were playing around with the different rules around dying. And I ended up creating 4-5 characters in the span of 6 weeks, I think it was. And it was a blast. And, coming from my background, from what I know, I wouldn't say that it was easy to pick up all of that stuff and learn it all at the same time. But it definitely wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be, and a lot of it seemed to make sense. And so as far as all of the stuff that you're talking about now and where we're at now, I think it's on the other side.
There it is.
And where we're at now, it's changed even so much since then, because we got to a point where we got so busy we had to stop doing our play test.
Yeah, we still have 1 encounter that we haven't played.
Really?
Yeah. So once
we should
once it gets a little less busy,
we'll get the team in here and we'll do that encounter here.
I could do that. Yeah.
If you want, I don't know. We could.
Give it a shot. Have to clear up everybody's time and have to do that.
Well, whatever. We can do that. So it's interesting to see where everything is now from where it was when we first started doing the play tests a long time ago. And
there's 8 more classes than when you started, I think.
Oh yeah. That's nuts. So let's see. Play it on stream. That's what I'm thinking. So do we want to do some questions for the cleric? Do you want to cover some more stuff? Do you want to hold on to some stuff?
I do want to cover a couple things that we kind of touched on there, because I was talking about how the deity sets the possible alignments. They also set what type of energy you channel. So in Pathfinder 1, that also was alignment based. But we knew there were some deities who thematically, even though you could be neutral for them, they wouldn't want you to channel negative energy and heal the undead, or they wouldn't want you to channel positive energy and heal the living. So the deity also determines what types of energy you can channel or what you choose from. So Lamashtu is one of our kind of go-to examples, because she's about fecundity and stuff like that. So that's one of her areas of concern. So she can do either positive or negative, and she can heal the living or harm the living. Her followers can.
I like that versatility.
Yeah.
Being able to do that.
It also gives people a lot more knobs to play with in their own games, in their home games. If they're not using Golarion, they can kind of say, I've got more tools to play with to make my deities really feel, get reflected in their clerics.
Right, right. And kind of, I think it's a little bit more immersive.
Yeah,
I really like that. So,
it's a little less just kind of structural and more thematic.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah,
Let's go through a few. So if you have, and again, if you already asked a question up there in the chat, you might need to say it again because it kind of goes a little fast. And but if you have a question about the cleric, Logan will entertain those questions right now. Keep in mind, there are still some surprises. There are still some things that we plan to release as a blog or as an interview or something like that. So if that's the case, then we may not be able to cover it just because we don't want to spoil the progression of information.
Yeah.
So can you shed some light on some of the 10th level spells?
Sure. So the 10th level spells, you can access those by taking a 20th level feat, and you get a 10th level spell. So some of them are kind of the most extremely strong 9th level spells from First Edition. And Mark talked a little bit about this in his blog, that we kind of took those and we said, all right, we're going to let you use Miracle, in the cleric's example, and it's not going to cost you anything. It's not going to cost you Diamond Dust anymore, but it's going to cost you a 10th level spell. So you can cast Miracle once a day, and it doesn't cost you Diamond Dust or anything like that. And so that's an example of an old spell that is now a 10th level spell. And there are a few that are in that category. But there are also some new ones. So one of the ones the cleric has, or that's on the divine list, is Avatar, which turns you into an avatar of your deity. So you just Hulk out and become, a kick-ass, avatar of Gorham, or not as kick-ass avatar of Shellen,
but still,
but pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And so you kind of embody your deity for a little while. So the 10th level spells are kind of some of the most big and kind of interesting spells that you really have to get up there to use. There are also some spells, I talked about heightening before. There are also a large number of spells that you can heighten to 10th level for extra effects and just ridiculous things. So even though you don't have a whole lot of slots for them, and we kept the number of 10th level spells relatively small, especially since the playtest document had limited space.
Right.
But there are a lot of things you can heighten into those slots that can really kind of blow your mind a little bit.
It's exciting.
It's pretty cool.
And this is actually going to be in the playtest. This is something that people
the
will
10th
be
level
able to
spells will be in the playtest. They are, and I think we're hoping to have a few more of them, and we're going to see how people respond to the structure of them and all that throughout the playtest.
Nice.
See if there's anything that people really want to see change with them, just like everything else.
Which is why we need you to participate in the playtest.
Yeah.
It really is important to get your feedback while you're playing it. So let's go on to any deities allow clerics 2 steps away in alignment.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
I don't remember exactly. I would say, I don't remember if any in the playtest do specifically, but it absolutely could happen. Especially deities who just don't care. Mm-hmm. So there are a fair number of deities who are just whatever alignment you want, that's not my problem. Serve me and spread my word, and that's cool. But I don't remember it specifically for the playtest document.
All right, so it's a solid I don't know. Thanks, Logan. Good thing you're on the show. We have something particularly pointed towards the playtest, actually. I think this is an interesting one. At a traditional Ergothoan feast, what is customarily served? This almost sounds like the beginning of a joke. You know what I mean? We're waiting for
this is how an Ergothoan would tell a joke at a traditional Ergothoan feast. Is this a feast for living creatures or for undead creatures?
Let's say, you know what? Let's start with living.
Okay. For living creatures, I'm going to say a fair number of insects, some delicious, hard-shelled, nice chitinous, crunchy.
A beetle?
Yeah, some
maybe?
beetles.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Maybe there's a lot of giant insects around. You get one giant grub, you're good for a while.
You're full.
You slice the right
I had a grub
sacks out of the. You get a giant caterpillar, you slice out the poison sacs in the right way.
Like a
That's great.
pufferfish?
And
You
yeah.
have to have like a special chef to carve it.
Or, depending on like the company you keep at this feast, maybe if things go wrong and you do get poisoned to death, they just bring you back and you join the undead's table.
It's like they've thought of everything.
Yeah, the living people are like the kids' table at the Urgathoan feast, and the undead are the adult table.
I like that. All right. And then what about...
And the undead just eat whoever dies at the kids'
of course. Yeah. Why not? I mean, you might as well. Hope that helps. If you're planning your
party planners
Urgathoan feast themed party, and we expect an invite. So. Oh, by the way, our Twitter, I'm pointing over here at the monitor. If you would like to chat with Logan or chat with me, you can find our Twitter handles right below in our names right there. So feel free to follow Logan and congratulate him on an awesome show. Let's see, where did we leave off? When are we planning to release the deity tables for minor gods?
It's probably not going to be during the playtest.
Okay.
That'll probably be for the full version. And I don't think any of them factor prominently in the adventure. If they had, we might have included them there, but it's kind of a different theme. It's not referring to those gods a lot. Mm-hmm. Though, it's one of those things that's like, I don't think we'll release anything official, but it might be fun to say, what if we were, theory crafting this one and coming up with some brainstorms for it. But I don't think we'll release anything official until the full version's out.
That's fair. I think being a playtest, there's a lot of things that we're focusing on to get feedback for, and a lot of
the number of deities we have already is kind of like that's already a lot to focus on. Mm-hmm. And when you're trying to collect data and get actually a good idea of what people are doing, you don't want to overextend yourself too much. One of the early playtests we actually had just like a subsection of the gods because we were playtesting we weren't playtesting Evil Alliance stuff at the time, so it was like, here's this many gods. Here are the non-evil gods, and we already, like at that point, got comments from people in houses like, wait, are you cutting Urgathoa out of the game? It's like, no. We just aren't statting everything up yet.
Yeah. There's a funny story that I think we told like on the very first test stream that we did with Jason, where Jason was out doing the like what we called the World Tour playtest, which is kind of going on where we were going around to conventions and things like that to kind of let people play. And in the pre-gens that he had made, he inadvertently left off alignment. And people were looking at it being like, is alignment not a thing anymore? And he's like, no, there's, I always want to do a Jason Bullman impersonation. no, that's just a mistake, And so it's little things like that we know what's changing kind of for this stuff, but other people don't. So a little tiny omission leads to really big assumptions sometimes. So.
Yeah, and that happens fairly often in the kind of conversations around these things. We don't want to get so deep that we have to spend, 3,000 words talking about all the specific details of how things are generated. So we don't go too deep, but then people kind of will make their own assumptions about how things work together or things that they assume are going to come forward from the first edition that aren't necessarily or that are changing. So, but we're kind of still at the phase where we want people to get the final book and then digest it and understand everything. But right now, because we don't have the surveys out, we aren't doing the playtesting window yet, getting like the nitty-gritty mechanical stuff isn't really a priority right now. We're more kind of getting first impressions and giving people an idea of what to expect in a very general sense.
Right. Let's see, what else do we have here? Deity tables. Will the domain abilities and spell point pool, along with cantrips, I'm having a hard time seeing that, make up for the loss of the higher number of low-level spells that are the new 3 spells per level mechanic introduces?
Okay.
That was a long question that I fumbled my way through.
All right. So as they're suggesting, as you go up in level, in first edition, you got a whole bunch more low-level spells. So, you're hitting the higher levels of the game. You're still getting spells of your much lower level slots for a while. And the new game has both the heal spells that you're getting on top of that, which is kind of taking the place of channel, and it's also, you're getting domain powers, which use spell points, which are a special resource that you can spend just to cast those special types of spells, but not to cast any of your other spells. So you are getting additional spells per day, but they're in these specific buckets rather than getting more spell slots. And so the asker is asking whether that kind of makes up for those number of slots. We kind of look at it a little bit differently. As far as the actual quantity, I don't know. It kind of depends on whether you get more spell points because there are feats to get more of them, whether you take the feat to get more cantrips and that kind of thing. Your quantities can go up. But we kind of look at it more as what are the choices you're making? Because we wanted to kind of pull out some of the choices you're making that are not as exciting and not as impactful. So if you are 8th level and you're preparing a whole ton of first level spells, that's not the most intriguing part of running your character. So we wanted to kind of say, all right, we are going to not give you as many spells, but kind of do more with those spells. So there's still some really interesting stuff with what you prepare in those lower level slots, particularly with how heightening works, with how spells DCs work. One of the things that we mentioned in some of the blogs is that as you go up in level, you really want your lower level slots to be doing things that have like a debuff or a buff or something like that, rather than using them for like damage spells. Because damage spells, you're going to want to use higher level slots because they do more damage. But we've changed it so your spell DC is always the same for all your spells.
Okay.
So those lower level ones that might require someone to make a save stay stronger longer. Though you still, like, if you have a debuff spell that's a 5th level spell, it's still going to be stronger than a 2nd level debuff spell, but it's no longer going to be more likely to affect them in the first place. It's just going to have better effects when it does.
Okay.
And the spell points, it kind of depends on your domain. A lot of them are kind of specific, and they're really themed to your deity. And the heals are definitely going to be a pretty big deal, though, the channel energy slots, because they are always at your highest level of spell.
Right.
So you're playing Kira at 1st level. She's got her 2 1st level spells, but she's also got like probably 4 or 5 1st level heal spells that she gets per day. And if she goes up in level to 3rd, they're going to be 4 2nd level spells per day, and on top of her normal 2 prepared 2nd level spells. So we think that's going to be pretty significant because those are balanced to be as strong as a spell of their level. So having that many of them is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. That was a
I hope that was detailed.
You're really good at this.
Explain rules for a living.
Let's see. We are. Do you know where we're at right now? Clerics are trained in divine. Oh, wait, that one?
That's character level. So it's asking about how the DC for spells works. Mm-hmm. So your DC is using the proficiency system, which is kind of a big part of the structure of this game, which is to say there are things you're untrained in, things you're trained in, things you're an expert in, a master in, or a legend in. You start out, you're really just going to be looking at those first 3 categories. You're untrained in anything that you don't get from your class or from some other source. You're going to start out trained in a bunch of stuff. All your skills that you pick at 1st level, all the armor and weapons you're proficient in at 1st level, you're probably going to be trained in those. Right. There are a few classes that get expert at 1st level. I don't believe the cleric gets expert in anything, but like the fighter is an expert in weapons right away.
Right.
And those categories are going to determine the bonus you add to all checks with that skill or that weapon or whatever you're using. And spells work the same way. So if you start out with your cleric at 1st level, you're trained in your spell rolls. So that means you add your level plus the relevant ability modifier, wisdom in the case of a cleric, and if you were something other than trained, you would add a different number instead of your level. Trained means you add a number equal to your level. Mm-hmm. If you were an expert, you would add your level +1. If you were untrained, you would do your level +2. Or, sorry, your level -2.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's not as good.
It's supposed to be.
So anything that uses proficiency is always using your character level, not the spell level.
Let's see. Heightened effects based off of some of the mythic spells and their augments?
Right. So Mythic Adventures has special ways you can augment some of your spells using your mythic points. So I think the question is asking whether any of the heightened versions of spells use the same kind of style of things that were in some of the mythic points, because those did use existing spells and then let you spend mythic points to make them better. I think there are a few things that are inspired by some of those mythic uses. I can't remember any off the top of my head though. But a lot of spells that kind of in first edition appeared at one level and then just kind of there was nothing like them at higher levels. A lot of those got a heightened version, and some of those are based on what happened in what we put in Mythic Adventures.
Okay, all right. Let's see, going back up, it's never ghost to devour your table mate. I mean, come on. If we're talking, I'm assuming you're talking about the Ergothone Feast.
Yeah.
So you're good. Go for it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Depends on which course it is. That's good. And some of these people I recognize from the Glass Cannon chat. So Raz, how are you? It's good to see you again. Jim's there. Oh, good. We're gonna cut out my Jason impersonation. Let us never talk about that again. It's gonna be an awkward carpool ride home.
You're going to be very disappointed in you, Dan.
How do you not do, like, it is so hard to not do an impersonation. I'm sorry. Let's see.
Good thing is you can bribe him with scotch if you want him to get over it.
Really sorry, man. Here's a bottle. Let's see. Why do domain powers use spell points and not domain points?
That is because other classes get a similar thing. So if you were multi-classed into wizard, you would have your school powers that also use spell points. So you would have one pool that you could use to fuel both things.
Okay.
So they're kind of unified because all the powers work the same way.
Okay, interesting. I like that. Let's see.
And just to give context in case...
Just going to interrupt me like
that.
Yep.
The spell points that you get, any class that gets a class feature that lets them cast special spells that are kind of unique to their class is going to do that by using spell points. And those are based on one of their ability scores. So the cleric starts out with spell points equal to their wisdom modifier.
Oh, okay.
And then they can cast their they get one domain spell that they start out with, and they can cast that using one spell point. And actually, I wrote down a few notes about some of the deities and domains if people would be interested in hearing about that.
I mean, I'm sure they would. Yes.
So I grabbed a couple of deities who have some similarities in their domains, but are very kind of different in their attitude. So I was looking at Iomedae and Gorum, who share 3 domains, which are confidence, might, and zeal. There are a lot of new domains in this book. There are a large number of the old ones still here, but there's a big list.
Okay.
And then Iomedae also has truth, whereas Gorum has destruction. So and they also, the deities give you spells that get added to your spell list. So this was similar to in Pathfinder 1 where your domain would do that. We wanted to make it, again, a little more specific to the deity. Right. So that we could have things like, Saren Ray is going to give you Fireball, because Saren Ray likes Fireball, even if that isn't the particular domain you're pursuing. Nethys is going to be really interesting. I think some people will flip their wigs over when they see Nethys's list.
Logan Bonner says, "Hang on to your wigs, kids."
That's right.
Is that so? Is that a teaser, or are you going to launch into?
I'm not gonna talk about Nethys right now.
It's a teaser.
Yeah,
hold on.
Sorry. But Iomedae gives you True Strike, Remove Paralysis, and Fire Shield at the appropriate levels.
Okay.
Gorum gives you True Strike, Enlarge, and Weapon Storm, which is a new spell. And this is a standard spell, not a domain spell. But Weapon Storm, you take your weapon and you make a swinging motion and you do like a cone of weapon attacks, just wreck a whole bunch of people all at once. It's really cool.
Nice.
It kind of replicates your weapon and lays waste to some folks. And so each of those domains has special spells, like Confidence has Veil of Confidence as its initial one and Delusional Pride as its advanced one. You can take a feat later to get an advanced power at a higher level that's a little stronger. and that will give you more spell points, and some of them cost more spell points as well.
Okay.
Might Domain gives you Athletic Exploit and Enduring Might. Zeal gives you Weapon Surge and Prepare for Battle. Destruction gives you Destructive Cry and Destructive Aura, and Truth gives you Word of Truth and Glimpse the Truth. And Word of Truth is one where you cast this spell and you say something that is true, or at least that you believe to be true. As long as you're being fully honest, a symbol appears showing everybody else that you are speaking honestly.
Oh, okay.
So you'd be like, no, I can prove it.
Interesting. Okay. So does that... my characters have lied a lot in the past. Getting back to
your
the
rogues? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does that... So then you wouldn't have to do like a bluff or anything like that then? It's just...
No, because it is something that's true. Like, you are not lying. You have to be speaking the truth, or the spell isn't going to work.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. That's kind of cool. Does that work on other characters?
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it's just you.
Okay.
I think it is your deity vouching for you personally.
I'm taking you off topic. I'm sorry.
I don't know. if people in playtest say they should work on other people,
all right,
that might be good. Other willing creatures.
Yeah,
probably not just like, hey, wait a minute, you. But that's what some of the more powerful spells are for. This one you get at first level, so you can.
Oh, perfect.
You can have your deity vouch for you right away.
I like it. I like it.
There are also a few of the new just like general divine spells that I was going to talk about a little bit. Some new ones that I think people would like. So some of the lower level ones. One is Crisis of Faith. So you make your target have a crisis of faith, and it can kind of mentally hurt them, and if they critically fail, they can't cast divine spells for a while because it's that bad.
Yeah. Oh.
So actually kind of
crisis.
talking to, you're shaking your faith through the means of the spell. There's also Disrupting Weapons, which lets you turn a bunch of allies' weapons into ones that can disrupt undead and do more damage to them.
Okay.
That one's pretty fun. It starts out, I think, at 2, and then heightened versions that can affect more and cause them to deal more damage. Then a couple of high-level ones. I already talked about Avatar. That was a 10th level spell. One of the ones I wrote is a 9th level spell called Revival, which heals a bunch of people in a burst and brings back dead people, but only for a little while. They come back with some temporary hit points and can fight for a little bit longer. But if you want to raise them permanently, you're going to have to use Raise Dead or resurrect them in some other way.
Interesting. Okay, I got that. I like that. And it's a temporary thing.
Yeah.
All right.
It's we'll try to win this fight.
So they come back long enough though to contribute to a skirmish.
As long as their temporary hit points last.
Oh, I like that.
And I think there's a limit also. They'll expire eventually.
Right.
Both the temporary hit points and the people.
Okay. I'm seeing. Do you have a favorite domain?
Oh, that's a good question. There are a lot of cool ones. I like Trickery. Speaking to your rogue heart, I like the Trickery domain. It's fun.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's see. Somebody wants to know more about this Nethys thing. You're killing them.
That's all right.
That was a good teaser, though. I'll give you that. I liked that. The way you kind of dropped it in there.
Yeah.
It's good.
I've got one that works for both, that doesn't answer the teaser that I presented, but does give a little information on Nethys and on items.
Okay.
So one of the things we changed, so Nethys's favored weapon, all the deities still have a favorite weapon. You're going to become proficient in it if you're a cleric of that deity. Nethys's is the staff. It's not the quarterstaff, because we kind of looked at how the quarterstaff was working, and we said, well, how many wizards actually want this? So we changed it around a little bit, and now the staff is a one-handed weapon. It's a little more like I'm shaking my wizard staff at you that does more damage if you use 2 hands with it, if you really want to.
Interesting.
And Nethys gives you that. So.
All right. Well, a little more information on Nethys out there for you. Let's see. An equipment question. Will there be any items that add an action economy bonus for having expert or legendary qualities? So letting you draw a potion for less than an action, that's an example.
For items, yes. Magic items might be able to do something like that, but there aren't really, but like not mundane items. It would have to be something that is some type of magical effect letting you do it. So like if you had a quick draw sheath or something like that, which I don't think is something we have in the document, but I could see an item like that, you activate it for free instead of spending an interact action. It pops into your hand, that kind of thing. Similarly, there is like the returning thing, which is effectively an action economy gain because you throw the javelin and the javelin returns to you. You don't have to spend an action drawing another javelin, that kind of thing. There's some stuff like that. There's also a new category of items that could make an item like that return once that we'll probably be talking about more when we get to magic items.
All right.
But there's some kind of ways to play with some of your gear using a specific new category of item.
All right. Another teaser.
Yeah. I don't know if we've talked about it yet. So
okay.
Jason
fair.
probably spoiled it at some point.
What?
We'll see if he,
No.
that never happens.
There's been so many public Q&A and play tests and stuff like that. We have an idea of what we want to release in order and how we want them to go out. And it actually gets difficult the more you talk to groups and the more you play and things come up that you have to talk about. And it's a quandary sometimes, So let's see, where are we? Tradition, Crisis of Faith sounds very thematic. Yeah, it does. How do non-damage dealing cantrips scale with auto heightening?
It's going to depend on the cantrip. So, for example, the Sigil cantrip, which you might have known as Arcane Mark before, lasts longer. So some of the ones that are more kind of utility things last a longer time. Detect magic scales up by giving you more information, that sort of thing. So it depends on the cantrip, and there are a few that don't really scale up, like Prestidigitation. There's not really a lot of places for it to go. There's also one of the main things about spells is that the level matters more from comparing spell to spell. So like if you're trying to dispel something, the higher level is harder to dispel. And there are some categories that automatically can dispel each other, and one of the big ones is light and darkness. So your light cantrip gets stronger, and you can use it to dispel magical darkness by just casting light into that area. And if something is lower level than you and casts a 3rd level darkness, and you cast a 4th level light, you're going to be able to overcome it.
Okay, interesting. I like the ideas that things can last longer because you're better. You've heightened. I think that's really good. Let's see. Where does alchemy end and magic begin?
That's a good question. I think right now we're mostly we talked a little bit about magic items and alchemy, but we haven't gotten really super deep into magic items yet. There are kind of some thematic barriers between the two. Particularly, alchemy usually is like something that a chemical reaction could do. In some cases, that can be pretty extreme. Like a mutagen, for example, can make pretty drastic effects without being magical.
Right.
But something like making, a person levitate is less likely to be in alchemy than it is in magic, and it would have to be like a very specific, special case where alchemy would be able to do something like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. There you go. It sounds like a very deep question to me.
It is.
It sounds like one of those meaning of life almost type questions. Where does it end and where does it begin? We are. Since magic weapons do additional dice of damage, what happens with weapons that have multi-damage dice, i.e. 2d6?
We don't have any that do multi-damage as their base damage. So like the greatsword is now a d12, and there are other ways that it kind of compares to like a great axe. So with weapons, we kind of did them on a more strict like 1d4 to 1d12 scale. And because if you've got a +1 weapon, you're adding an extra damage die, we didn't really want to have to say, you add 1 damage die, or 2 damage dice if it has 2 damage dice, and that kind of thing. But the weapon traits make a much bigger difference for how the weapon functions. So the great sword compared to the great axe, the great sword has the versatile trait, so you can do piercing or slashing damage with it.
Okay.
And the Great Axe has the sweep trait, which means if you've attacked once with it, attacking someone else in kind of a cleaving motion is more effective.
Okay.
So there are other ways to compare them than just their damage dice, because we kind of wanted to get away from that being a huge thing, and we also knew that because of the way we were changing critical hits, having the big critical threat range being a big part of the weapons wasn't really going to work with how we wanted to structure the game and how roles play out. So the traits are picking up a lot of that that pressure of creating interesting differences between the weapons. And I think there's a lot more comparisons you can make between the different weapons now based on those, and a lot of kind of situational things where you're going to want to pick up different kinds of weapons and use them in certain circumstances.
Okay, interesting. I like that. Let's see. If potions are no longer spells in a can, what do they do now?
Depends on the potion. They're all written from scratch. So you still have a few categories that are spells. That's like scrolls and wands are still going to be, there is a spell on this, you cast that spell. But we didn't really want to have those, and then also potions do the same thing, but only for ones that can affect you. So potions, there's a shrinking potion, there are healing potions, there are potions of breathing, dragon breath, stuff like that. So
Okay.
there are a bunch of different options. They're all created from scratch to be a cool thing that you could drink and then get this benefit. So they're kind of a lot more flexible now. And there are still a few that work pretty much like spells, but we kind of picked the ones that we knew we really wanted to have working that way. And we can also make whatever exceptions we want for how long they last or whatever effects based on the specific item. So like there's still an invisibility potion, but there's not the invisibility spell turned into water.
Okay, yeah. I gotcha. Yeah, okay. I hope that helps. And I'm sure there's a fizzy lifting drink already in there.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I mean,
Steven would know.
I don't know. It's like that's a spoiler for somebody else. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Really.
Yeah.
Are proficiency runes limited by item quality?
All right, so the runes we talked a little bit about in the blog that I wrote on kind of armor and other gear. So magic armor is going to have a potency rune on it, and that rune has a number between 1 and 5. So this is kind of the same thing as the +1 through +5 weapons from Pathfinder 1. The difference being we've kind of codified them as they are runes that you have applied to a weapon. We've made it a little more clear how you can kind of transfer them from one weapon to another by re-etching the runes, and how you can upgrade them from a +2 to a +3 by altering the runes. They are, in fact, limited by quality. So the total potency you can have on the item depends on the quality of the base item. So you have to have a master quality weapon or armor to put, I believe, +3 or +4 on it, I think is the break point. Okay. Expert quality for anything lower than that. And there is also another category of runes that are the property runes. I'm going to go ahead and spoil that right now, I guess, which we're also pretty familiar from because they're the same concept in first edition of the weapon properties.
Right.
But again, they kind of use the same process, and the quality of the weapon limits how many of those you can have on it. So the quality is a cap on the potency that gives you a plus and extra dice, and it is a cap on the number of properties it can have. So it has to be a pretty high quality weapon to have flaming and frost.
Okay.
And even higher to be both those and vorpal.
Right. Okay. Huh. Well, there you go. It's a little OC. That's good. Original content for the stream.
Yeah.
So make those clips now. Share them a lot. Blame Logan if people get mad that was spoiled. Let's see.
And another thing that I mentioned in the blog was that we also made it so you can upgrade the potency of your specific items. So if you've got like a flame tongue and you want it to be a +5 flame tongue, you can make that happen. But you can't add property runes to it. So you can't make it a cold flame tongue. But
Okay.
you can increase its potency so it still stays at the damage amount and the accuracy you want to be using.
Nice. Do any weapons have multi-damage dice? Did we cover that a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Will there be a quick draw feat?
Yes.
Will you draw things besides weapons faster?
I don't remember.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Logan.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Well, there is for the Alchemist. The Alchemist can pull bombs and
Oh, right,
stuff.
yeah.
Can pull
I think
two
we talked about that
alchemical
with,
items at a time.
Steven,
yeah.
I think Steve
So
and I talked
right
about
now they're
that.
pretty specific. I don't know if we have a general just like pull whatever you want faster kind of thing. So
Okay. Will there be? I had one. How did? Will there be? See, I can't even see. Is it missability? Am I reading that wrong?
oh, potion missability.
Yes.
There will not be. So that's the old school. Drink multiple potions and they conflict and mess you up in some way potentially. We don't have that, but we do have the resonance rules. So resonance kind of determines how many magic items you can use safely in a day. And if you have run out of resonance, you can try to use more items. But each time you do, there's a greater chance that the item will not function for you or that you won't be able to use any more items that day.
Okay.
So there is not exactly potion missability, but there is kind of a push your luck. Do I want to use more items kind of thing? Which usually you're only going to push your luck if you need that healing potion really badly. But you might say, well, I want to try to kill this monster. I'm going to try to activate this item one more time. So
Right. And
we really want to see how that play tests and whether people are
willing to roll the dice.
willing to go beyond their limits and test that out.
I like that. How is proficiency? How does proficiency interact with AC?
Same way as with everything else. So proficiency, if you're wearing armor that you're untrained in, you're going to use your level -2 and then add the armor's item bonus to your AC. If you are wearing some you're trained in, you're going to add your level and 10 and your dex up to whatever the armor allows you to use, and then the item bonus. The only different thing with AC is that you're going to have to count both your armor and your shield. So if you are trained in wearing, so the rogue, for example, trained in wearing light armor, but you're not trained in shields, if you are trying to wear a shield, you don't really know what you're doing, so it's actually it's going to make you use your untrained proficiency for your AC because you're wearing one thing that you are untrained in.
Okay.
And most classes that get armor, especially the better armors, get shields at the same rate. So like fighters and paladins are going to usually have the same proficiency with those two categories.
Okay, awesome. So it looks like we're coming up on about 3 minutes until we've hit an hour.
Okay.
Time has really gone by.
Right.
So Logan, why don't you go through, look at a couple questions in there, see which ones you want to talk about. We could wrap it up with maybe a couple more. If we go over a little bit, I'm okay with that. I hope you're okay with that.
Sure.
If your
ride's
not waiting for you or something.
Yeah. So there's a question about whether we'll have the let's see, what was it called in Pathfinder 1? The Elixir of Sex Shift, I think, was the name. We do not have that in the playtest book. We left out a lot of stuff that is kind of more world building than mechanical. There's still a few things in there, but most of the stuff that we really are going to need to playtest thoroughly is like potions that let you breathe fire and that heal you and that kind of stuff. So a lot of kind of the stuff you're probably not going to carry around into a battle with you, we have omitted those things, still exist in the world. But there's a lot of that, and stuff like artifacts and things like that are in a similar spot where it's like, these still exist in the world, we're not including them in the playtest because we're focusing on the more mechanically, the stuff that needs to be really tight mechanically rather than thematically.
Right. Expect that there's going to be a lot of those things that have been dropped out just so we could
Yeah.
laser focus on getting
Yeah,
everything
it's
in
more
line.
likely to be in the full core rulebook, but we haven't worked on the list of what's going to be in there yet at all. So.
Okay, yeah. So for the playtest, no.
Right.
But
But it's certainly
for the
something
next
that is still
edition-
going to be in the world
yeah,
in some way.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think somebody asked whether it would be alchemical or magical, and I don't know. That's a good question.
What do you think?
I think it would fit within the kind of the bounds of alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
We could certainly make it fit within there, and in the real world, that is also true. So I think it would be reasonable to make it alchemical.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Arcane spell failure still a thing?
It was for a long time, and then at one point we just kind of said, these are the only people who are worrying about this. And do we really need it? So we are playtesting without arcane spell failure, and we'll see if we have a bunch of wizards who buy into becoming proficient in heavy armor and run around in full plate. We don't know if that's going to be an exciting enough use of their feats for them to do that, and we kind of want to find out.
Let's see. Raz played with tying resonance to constitution instead of charisma. I think.
We haven't really looked at using a different stat for resonance because kind of the precedent that Pathfinder 1 sets with stuff like use magic device and with spell-like abilities and with the sorcerer is that if magic is relying on kind of your innate magical power, it's going to use charisma. So we stuck with that for resonance. The exception to that is one of the classes that gets to use a different stat, but that is kind of more of a specific thing to their training that you'll find out later. You can probably guess, but I'm not going to say it yet. So.
Let's tease. Okay, let's do this. So first of all, I'm pointing at the monitor again. Right below our names, or right below our lovely faces, are our Twitter handles. Feel free to ask Logan any of the questions that you might have asked that we didn't get to. We tried to get to as many as possible, but it's a really interesting subject, and it's really easy to talk an hour and not even realize that it's been an hour. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Logan, I want to thank you for staying longer than anyone else has stayed, except for me on this ding show.
I'm the Iron Man.
You are the Iron Man. Oh, I like that. And my apologies to Gear that we got bumped for time.
Yeah.
We will have Logan back on, and we'll talk about that.
And you can go look at the blog to find out about gear, and
that's true.
Monday's blog to find out about weapons.
Oh, yeah. Hey, there you go. That's a good teaser, too. You're full
No,
of them.
last
Oh,
Monday.
yeah, last Monday. That's right. Is that Cypher's blog?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good
Correct.
blog. I like
Yeah.
that one. So feel free to hit us up. If you have any suggestions about the show, we're still evolving it. If you've stayed with us from the beginning, you've noticed a lot of changes that have been happening. And so feel free to give your opinions and let me know some feedback about the show. Again, these are going to be going up on our YouTube channel every Wednesday. The first one just went up. Number 2 will be going up next Wednesday. For all things Paizo throughout the week, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You'll find those addresses on the end card that should be coming up very soon. Yeah. Logan, anything else you want to finish off with?
I'm good.
All right. For Logan, for Paizo, for me, Dan Tharp, thank you for joining us this week, and we will see you again.